All right, hello there, everyone. So far, we have learned quite a bit about the beginning of World War I. We've learned about the four main causes. We've learned about the assassination of Archduke. We've learned about all of the key players kind of following each other into declaring war due to the alliance systems. We've learned about Germany trying the Schlieffen Plan and ultimately failing because Belgium gets involved, Russia moves quickly, and Great Britain actually comes to the aid of Belgium. But what we have not yet talked about is war on the home front. And World War I is going to be different in that we call this a total war. This means that war is going to require the use of all of society's resources. It's not just our soldiers that we're sending abroad. So, for example, most of our recent wars in the United States, so the conflict in Afghanistan, for example, or the Persian Gulf War, really, we did not experience a total war. We weren't rationing at home. We didn't shift all factories to producing things for the war effort. We weren't buying war bonds or anything like that. And so war in World War I was very different. World War I war was all hands on deck, everybody involved. As you can see in this image over here, these kiddos in Germany are actually collecting scrap metal to be melted down and then used for weapons and other military needs. We have women working in the workforce for the first time. So this idea of war on the home front is partially due to the first time even citizens being attacked. So if we're talking about the actual war front in Europe, of course, we find out Belgium gets attacked, but citizens are also going to all of a sudden become victims during the war, not just, these soldiers. So example being, Britain, as soon as Germany, of course, invades Belgium, Britain gets involved, and Britain decides to create a naval blockade of Germany. Their thinking is that if they can blockade all supplies from reaching Germany, this will actually cause Germany and Austria-Hungary to fall out of the war. Unfortunately, what this means, with all supplies is, they're going to limit supplies for the war effort, but unfortunately, they're also going to limit things like food from reaching German citizens. So ordinary German citizens are unfortunately going to be meeting and faced with hunger, severe hunger and starvation. Some of this was also due to poor harvests at the time and mismanagement of resources, but much of this was also due to the naval blockade. So Germany's response to this naval blockade is actually unrestricted submarine warfare. Submarines, of course, are called U-boats. These U-boats are they've been around ever since actually the Civil War, but they're going to be used by the Germans to basically defend themselves against this blockade and announcing that they are going to have unrestricted warfare, which means they're not going to ask questions. They're going to shoot first and then confirm later. Any merchant ship, any ship that is within their area that they are patrolling, they will shoot it down. And so these U-boats are going to start attacking enemy ships. Many of these, of course, are merchant ships. Some of these, of course, are military ships. And others of these end up being passenger ships. And so this measure ends up being vilified in propaganda, where you see Americans or British, for example, saying defeat the Kaiser, right? So this is Kaiser Wilhelm, right, of Germany, and his U-boats, his submarines. Victory depends on which fails first, food or frightfulness, right? So you may be hungry, but, don't show fear, right? Eat less wheat, right? We'll preserve our resources, right? And we can overcome this U-boat, attacks, these U-boat attacks. So another one, of course, enlisting, protecting your family. This idea of again, almost a romantic view of war. Destroy this mad brute. Again, here you're looking at a German, sort of personification here in the form of an ape or a gorilla that appears to be kind of mad. You see the little German helmet on top, and it says enlist in the U.S. Army. So a great deal of propaganda is going to make the German U-boats sort of unrestricted submarine warfare the villain. But of course, don't forget, the reason for them doing this is, of course, that they are being attacked and also being blockaded, and literally their citizens are starving to death. There were some interesting things, a little side note, in order to prevent your ships from being actually sank by submarines. And one of these, interestingly, is called Dazzle Camouflage. So this was an idea that you could actually camouflage your ships. So this is a ship in 1918 using Dazzle Camouflage. The idea is not to actually camouflage it, but from far distances. These abnormal sort of stripes, actually adopted from the zebra, makes it very difficult to understand and to be able to determine how quickly a ship is moving, what direction it's moving, how far away it is, which could then cause misfires. So interesting strategy, not one that's around anymore today. So when we talk about the government's actions, you're going to have, of course, propaganda. Propaganda, this is that information that's designed to influence opinions. You guys worked with this a little bit yesterday, but a huge part of propaganda is to get everybody on board. All assets need to be mobilized, right? Don't waste bread. Save 2 slices every day. Defeat the U-boat, right? We can send these resources abroad to our soldiers, right? Rally around the flag, very nationalist, right? We must have more men. This is when you start to see conscription. This is if you don't have enough men to sign up for the war effort, then conscription is also considered the draft, will end up being used. Factories are going to start producing military equipment instead of your normal consumer products. Civilians are going to conserve food, as I said. And again, your news reports are going to be censored greatly by the government. Particularly Germany is a good example of this, where as long as the news, the government could control the news, they could actually control reports about casualties or reports about attacks by Brits. And so therefore the German population is learning everything through propaganda, not necessarily factual reporting. Much of this also inflates, actually, for Germany, their confidence in how well Germany is doing in the war, when in fact Germany is not doing particularly well in the war. Which inevitably, when they end up losing and then they are punished so severely by the Treaty of Versailles, this comes as a shock to them. And many of them, again, are going to harbor a great deal of resentment and denial that they could have possibly have lost. It must be someone else's fault. And hence later we'll see scapegoats being blamed for their loss. So when you're looking at propaganda, remember, that they are trying to influence people's opinions. It could be as easy as on the front page of a paper saying, hey, we killed 4,000 Germans today in the Battle of whatever, right? But in the back of the paper, in small fine print, hey, we actually lost 5,000 of our own men, right? That's not something you want to broadcast. And so really controlling the information that is being given to your population can greatly impact your ability to wage a total war. All right, with that, the sinking of the Lusitania. So this is going to be a major moment, and we'll take a look at it very quickly. But the sinking of the Lusitania, let me see if I can get to it, sorry. We will end up talking about a little bit later, but this is going to be in May of 1915, and this is one of the reasons that the United States joins the war effort, but again, we don't actually join the war until 1917. So I just want to mention the Lusitania really quickly. As I mentioned, Germany begins this unrestricted submarine warfare. Any ship around Great Britain is open for attack, and the Lusitania was actually a passenger ship. In May of 1915, the Lusitania set sail and was actually torpedoed and sank 10 miles off the coast of Ireland. It took about 18 minutes to sink. Roughly 761 people were rescued. About 1,100 some died, and about 120 of them were Americans. And part of this, a lot of people would say, well, they knew that there was this unrestricted submarine warfare. They knew that this was happening. Furthermore, there were actually guns on board. So as much as this was a passenger vessel, it was also kind of a merchant vessel getting supplies to the war. And so the Germans, of course, are going to, again, it's unrestricted, right? They're not going to ask questions. They just sink it. And so Americans at this point start to maybe question, whether or not they should continue a policy of isolationism. And of course, they do not immediately intercede and join the war, but this is certainly something that will influence them. Germany kind of realizes that this has maybe caused quite a rift, and so they're actually going to call off this unrestricted submarine warfare from 1915 to 1917, when they will resume again. And of course, when they resume again, you'll notice the year 1917 is approximately the same time that the Americans will end up joining the war effort. All right, guys, with that, here's what I would like for you to do. Okay, you are going to please go to your Unit 8 World War I interactive study guide, or interactive notebook rather. You are going to slide 8. Okay, make sure first of all that you did the propaganda document from yesterday. There's a quick ed puzzle that went with it. And then today, please examine these cartoons. Okay, I mentioned this. The word Hun, by the way, okay, Hun is not like your honey. A Hun is Hungarian, right? Okay, or in this case, it's actually German. All right, so beat back the Germans, okay, with Liberty Bonds. And of course, okay, you see him looking like a villain, okay, overlooking the Western Front, okay, trench warfare. You see a nasty bayonet, right, evil looking eyes, right, all of that sort of stuff there. And so please answer these questions, take a screenshot, and then attach it to today's assignment. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we will soon be talking about the American entry into the war, and 1917 becoming a really tough year for the Allies before their entry. All right, have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you soon.